Hello and welcome to The Rising, a podcast where we delve deep into everything related to Freemasonry and particularly, but not limited to, Freemasonry governed by the United Grand Lodge of England under the District Grand Lodge of Madras.
This is episode 2, and we have an absolutely amazing episode lined up for you. The following conversation is conducted by our very own brother Sriram, who will introduce you to a very exciting guest for this episode. Over to you, brother.
Good morning, brethren. This is Sriram Gangadharan, signing you in to an island nation rich in Masonic traditions and its practices. I'm really excited to conduct this conversational session with Right Worshipful Brother Ferhad Jamshed Nilgiria. Right Worshipful, the District Grand Master of the District Grand Lodge of Sri Lanka. Thank you so much, Right Worshipful Brother, for having accorded us your time. And it is our true privilege to discover the world of Freemasonry in Sri Lanka with you. Right Worshipful Brother, welcome. For the benefit of our younger brethren, Right Worshipful Brother Ferhad Nilgiria was initiated into Freemasonry in Orion Lodge number 5130 in 1989. Since then, he has held many covetable positions like the District Grand Secretary, the District Grand Director of Ceremonies, the District Grand Director Register, Deputy District Grand Master, and yes, finally, the Right Worshipful, the District Grand Master. A very accomplished professional at work, the Right Worshipful Brother Ferhad is a pretty grounded, humble, witty, and a person who enjoys simple things in life. Right Worshipful Brother, most of our brethren seldom have had the opportunity to visit lodges outside of India, and I would therefore request you to take us through what the beginnings of Freemasonry was in Sri Lanka and how it has evolved.
Thank you, Brother Sriram. First of all, it's a pleasure to be with you, and I'm honored that you have invited me to participate in this L&D program of yours. So as far as Freemasonry in Sri Lanka goes, the first records that we have of any form of Freemasonry in Sri Lanka traces back to the Dutch era in Sri Lanka, when there was a lodge called the Lodge of Fidelity, which had a warrant under the Dutch Grand Lodge, warranted in the year 1770.
1770, wow.
English Freemasonry, as we know it today, only took its roots when St. Andrew's Union Lodge, number 590, was established in 1799. The lodge was very transitory, lasted for just 4 years before shutting down. The true era of English Freemasonry in Sri Lanka commenced in, one would say, 1838, because that's when our oldest lodge, St. John's Lodge of Colombo, was warranted. That lodge in turn traces its roots back again to the Dutch era, which was the Union Lodge of Colombo, which then from the Dutch Constitution transited to the French Constitution. And it was that lodge which in February of 1938 petitioned the United Grand Lodge of England to be permitted to start a lodge of the English Constitution under the name of St. John's Lodge of Colombo. The lodge was actually warranted under the number 665, and in 1863 that changed to 454. Further English lodges started in the country, St. George in 1886, Adams Peak in 1897. And with the turn of the century, there was a small rush of lodges being constituted. Grant 2862, Connaught Lodge in 1902, Grant in 1901. New Aurelia came along in 1903. Now, those were the existent lodges at the time that the District Grand Lodge of Sri Lanka was formed in 1907. Tracing back, the first moods to form a district was formed in 1886. That's what our records show, that the first official petition was only sent in 1904 to Grand Lodge. And it was disregarded by Grand Lodge because the senior brother, then resident in Ceylon as we were then, wrote to Grand Lodge saying that he could not in good conscience recommend the colony. So there were some years of in-between persuasion before in 1907, that same brother wrote back to Grand Lodge recommending that the District Grand Lodge of Ceylon be formed. So the first District Grand Lodge, it was in 1907 that the then Grand Master, the Duke of Connaught, arrived in Ceylon. And on the 18th of March, he announced that he had appointed the then Governor General of Ceylon, Sir Henry Blake, who was a past District Grand Master of Jamaica, to be the first District Grand Master of Ceylon. District Grand Lodge was then consecrated on the 1st of May, 1907. After the formation of District Grand Lodge, we had a number of other lodges coming in. Uva in 1910, Kurnagala in 1913, Orion, my own mother lodge, in 1929. Trincomalee came along in 1950. R.C. Scott in 1961. And the last of our current lodges, which is the Sri Kumaranam Lodge Install Masters, came along in 2005. One of the most significant years of Freemasonry in Ceylon was in 1928. In that year, Lord Cornwallis, the then Deputy District Grand Master, arrived to install Worshipful Brother Bailey as our Right Worshipful District Grand Master. It was on that occasion that a Scottish Freemason, Worshipful Brother Dias, made a somewhat controversial address, at least controversial at that time, to the Deputy Grand Master, pointing out that in Colombo, there was no lodge of the English Constitution which the Ceylonese could join.
Wow.
The Deputy Grand Master apparently would not leave Ceylon without a petition being granted to him for such a lodge to be warranted. That was done, and in 1929, Orion was warranted. So Orion was the first lodge in Colombo of the English Constitution which Ceylonese could join.
Such rich cultural heritage your lodge has, brother.
Well, it is also, we like to boast that of the 15 district grand masters, 4 of them have come from Orion that we've had. Plus, I think another 4 deputy district grand masters. Other than that, of course, we have moved on. We celebrated our centenary in 2007, and that was when the then assistant grand master, Right Worship Brother David Williamson, arrived in Sri Lanka to install Worship Brother Dr. Milroy Pereira as the district grand master on the same day. Over the years, we've lost 2 of our lodges. Trincomalee, which when the British naval base closed down, with the agreement of the district, petitioned London and moved to London, where they still operate today under the same number. So they are no longer part of our district. And very unfortunately, in about 1982, we lost Hoover, which was forced to surrender its warrant. Now, Hoover was one of our upcountry lodges, in which a number of the expatriate planters leaving, it was difficult to keep the lodge alive. So we lost it then. Well, that's roughly the basic history of Sri Lankan Freemasonry, but we also have some strong roots with District Grass. We like to tell you that we gave you a lodge, St. John's, which functions in Secunderabad.
I've been there so many times, but I've never understood that it's come from Sri Lanka.
And then moved to Secunderabad, where it, of course, functions to this day as part of your district. We also have a connection that in 1922, your then District Grand Master, Right Worshipful Brother Campbell, was installed by the District Grand Master of Ceylon, Right Worshipful Brother Green. And then the following year in 23, Right Worshipful Brother Campbell came over to Ceylon to install Right Worshipful Brother Ross as Right Worshipful Brother Green's successor. There was a further connection till about 1949. 51 on your own side, Right Worshipful Brother T. Muthukrishna Iyer came across with a delegation. Right Worshipful Brother Scott again came a couple of years later, and it was only 50 years later that we had another visit to your district in 2003 under Right Worshipful Brother Srivan Kumaranagar. But Right Worshipful Brother Theo, his installation was attended by our then District Grand Master in 2011, Right Worshipful Brother Dr. Milroy Pereira. Prior to that, I myself had the privilege of representing my district in 2001 when Right Worshipful Brother Ravi Menon was installed as your District Grand Master. And I was also honored by the presence of Right Worshipful Brother Theo in 2018 when I was installed as District Grand Master. Made rather frequent visits to Madras before and since.
Right Worshipful Brother, it's fantastic to know the kind of camaraderie that both the districts have shared with each other. It's really, really nice. Brother, a connected question from the upcountry lodges which we were talking about. In the northern part of Sri Lanka, do lodges still exist? And post the civil unrest time, how were the lodges functioning?
Actually, we have never had a lodge in the north. Trincomalee was the furthest outpost that we ever had. There has been talk from time to time in the past, even more recent years, of trying to open up a lodge in the north. But it has been dropped because we foresee, what can I say, of some concerns, mainly around cultural issues, if I can put it that way.
Okay.
Not for any other reason.
Well, another question of intrigue is, in a Buddhist majority country such as yours, how do the general population perceive Freemasonry? And are there obstacles that the district faces in recruiting candidates to the lodges?
Right. That's a good question. And it's something that we, of course, have had to face. So I think we initially need to look at it in the context that Buddhism is a philosophy rather than a religion. And of course, we do, of course, say that There's nothing religious in Freemasonry. The question really arises when you talk to someone who's a Buddhist, who then wonders that he says that, look, we do not have a supreme being in Buddhism. So how does that relate to your requirement that a Freemason must believe in the existence of a supreme? And this was something that actually taxed the district for a long time. The first known occasion on which this issue came up was in about 1926, I think, when Kurunnagal Lodge wanted to initiate a Buddhist, and there was some discussion about this. I have seen correspondence that the district has had with Grand Lodge on this. Very unsurprisingly, Grand Lodge remained totally non-committal throughout the whole of the affair. Finally, the district then got in touch with the District Grand Lodge of Burma, which was then existent. And Burma, as you will know, is a strongly Buddhist country. The response we got from there is to say, we have so many senior Buddhist prelates who are Freemasons over there. And as long as a Buddhist is willing to profess a belief in a supreme being, there is no issue in his being initiated. Well, based on that, Buddhists have been initiated into Sri Lanka, but from the district's point of view, it is only about in 1969 or so when the then district grand registrar, who was a very senior lawyer, actually spoke to some of the leading Buddhist prelates in Sri Lanka, and they also confirmed the same thing. So since we had an issue, recruitment, yes, is a problem, because when you look at it, the majority of the country are Buddhists. The majority of the country comes from rural areas where cultures are different, mindset is different. So in that sense, while we are open to recruiting Buddhists, we are limited to a very small pool from which we can recruit. Unfortunately, I have to say, without trying to be too elitist, that only those who have had some kind of exposure, if I can use that word, are open to the concepts of Freemasonry. So today we still continue to have candidates and free brethren who are Buddhists, who do enjoy being Freemasons and who participate. But by and large, they are, I would say,
they are a minority.
Yeah. As far as Sri Lankan Freemasons are concerned, we have a number of Christians, Hindus, like myself, Zoroastrians.
So it's a great mix.
A great mix.
Yeah. Well, currently, this one a very pertinent question. We understand that the country is going through one of its worst economic crises since its independence in 1948. And it has led to unprecedented levels of inflation, near depletion of foreign exchange reserves, shortages of medical supply, and an increase in prices in basic commodities. With this unprecedented levels of crisis in Sri Lanka, what are the challenges facing our ancient institution?
Well, let me start off by saying, quite surprisingly, recruitment at this point is not an issue. We have a number of candidates still coming in. So what we're looking at actually is a question more of retention. That is where we are having an issue, mainly because a number of our younger brethren, seeing that there is no future for them here, and also looking at their children's education and future prospects here, we have actually in the past, I would say 4 months, lost about half a dozen of them who have migrated. Sad, but understandable that they go that way. And of course, with the economic crisis proceeding, we had fuel issues. Things for quite some time were curtailed, and those lodges that were able to meet met, others led virtually. And to overcome the fuel issues, of course, brethren sort of got together and started carpooling. People from brethren who lived in one area would manage to get together and so on and get together through to meetings. But with the way costs are rising, I actually foresee a time not very far from now when lodges will start to reduce their meetings in order to reduce their costs. Until we find some kind of economic stability is achieved, then possibly we would meetings resume back again to normalcy. Also, I think we will have a problem with brethren who hold multiple memberships. I can see quite a few of them, especially the older ones, relinquishing some of those memberships, maybe sticking only to their mother lodge, and maybe there are brethren who, of course, have been affected by loss of jobs and even salary cuts. So that's another issue which we are looking at. The General Board is actually trying to formulate some sort of manner in which we can assist brethren. Finding jobs is not an issue. We have managed to get 2 or 3 brethren alternate employment. And well, there's something we are looking at. We haven't really formulated a firm strategy on that, but that is something we are looking at.
Follow-up question to the same thing. The point which you were talking about is you're already helping brethren to find jobs. That's a wonderful gesture. We are also curious to hear on how our brethren in the lodge have been true pillars to the society at large at these trying times. What is it that you all are doing?
Well, we have looked at what we can do best, how we can help the community at large. Really, the best way we could help is to try and alleviate the shortages of medicines, drugs, and consumable supplies for hospitals, of which there seems to be an immense shortage because the government obviously lacks money for funding these. So that's a program we started maybe about 3 months ago. We have kept working on it. We are trying to spread our outreach as far as possible. In other words, not restricting ourselves only to Colombo, but even to hospitals outside Colombo, in some of the major cities like Kandy, Kurunegala, even Norelia. Where, of course, we have lodges based. So we are working through those lodges to assist those hospitals. And we are making very good progress. And at this point, I really must thank your own district for coming forward so readily and voluntarily to assist us in this, which you have done. And that is, we are very thankful for that.
It's absolutely fantastic, brother. Right, Worship Brother, you joined Freemasonry way back in 1989. I'm not sure what the call of the times were back then, but what really attracted you to Freemasonry?
Well, I am a second generation Freemason. My father was a Freemason, and I had about at least 5 uncles who were Freemasons. So I suppose I did really apply a precept of our ritual, which says that what you observe praiseworthy in others, you should carefully emulate. Well, not just as a teenager, but as like a 10, 11-year-old, you are quite curious when you see your father every now and then wearing a complete black suit, white shirt, black tie, and carrying a small brown bag and disappearing for a few hours in the evening. And I once asked him, is this something to do that I always hear you and my other uncles talking about when you get this is something called a lodge and various things that you do? So he said, yes. And I said, what do you do there? He said, it's helped me to make me a better man. Well, that was the answer I got. Well, not very satisfactory to a 10-year-old, I can tell you, but it obviously seems to have stuck in my head. And over the years, of course, watching my father, seeing the way he interacted with people, the way he carried himself, in everything he did, that was a role model. And as you grew older and sort of thinking back, is okay, maybe this has something to do with his being a Freemason, quite possibly. And so that was a thought in my mind. Unfortunately, for a number of years, having studied overseas and been working overseas, there was no opportunity to join Freemasonry until I actually returned to Sri Lanka in about 1984 or 85, just before my father died, actually. And then again, busy setting up business, running with him. And then finally, at a birthday party of one of my uncles, I went to him and said, I'd like to become a Freemason. So he immediately shouted out for everybody to stop and said, Ferhad has finally decided to see the light. And he says the family was wondering when you were going to come and ask us. So I said, wonder no more. So that's how I really went in and became a Freemason. And I have never regretted a day of it.
That's fabulous, brother. Right, brother. There's being a torchbearer of Freemasonry in this country. We're curious to hear at least one anecdote that stands out in your memory.
Well, there are quite a few. I can start with the day of my initiation, when, of course, I went in to the lodge for the ceremony and then came in from darkness to light, and looking around, one of the faces I saw on the dais with a huge grin on his face was my then chairman. Now I was immediately started wondering, now what have I got myself into? Because just that morning I had spent 2.5 hours disagreeing with him on a matter of company policy, ending up by telling him that if the board wanted to carry out that policy, there would be somebody else to do it, because this is the way I wanted to do things. So anyway, meeting finished, changed, went downstairs. At the festive board, he was one of the first to come up and say, Ferhad, welcome to Freemasonry. And then he called my seconder, my proposer, unfortunately couldn't attend that meeting of my initiation, and says, Mallory, do you know that this guy spent 2.5 hours arguing with me in the morning on a matter of company policy, refused to carry out the policy that the company wanted. And he turned around and told me, you may be glad to know that the board met in the afternoon and agreed to do things your way. So I said, thank you very much, sir. So that's something that sticks because it happened on the day of my initiation. So that sticks in my head. As for other anecdotes, well, we did have a situation several years later when I was the district grand secretary, and we had an installation meeting of one of our upcountry lodges. So we all turned up at the Planters Club where the meeting was being held. And then very suddenly, just as the lodge was about to be opened, the secretary goes up to the master and says, "Worship Master, where's the minutes book? I didn't come last time, so it's in your custody." So he says, "I haven't brought it." The secretary flatly refused to go into the lodge without the minutes book. Well, there was some intervention and the master was told, "Well, you go back home and bring the minutes book." The master said, "It's 50 miles from here." He said, "It doesn't matter. You drive off, go and bring the book." And that being the installation. So he went off. He turned up about 2.5 hours later to find all of us congregated around the bar and asked us whether you have finished the meeting. We said, "No, we have done everything except the approval of the minutes and the installation of the master. We've called off the lodge. Now please come in and do your part." So we finally finished that meeting at about, what was it? Must have been 11 o'clock in the night. Finished the festive board and then left there about 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning. So one other part that sticks in my memory, and I think guess always will, was on the day I was raised, when our then district grand master, who was actually a member of my mother lodge as well, but one who did not really do much ritual after he became the district grand master, turned up at my raising and he had asked the master to let him or permit him to do a particular part of the ritual. When he did it, he did inform me that he had chosen to do it because on the day that he was raised, my father, who was then the master of the lodge, had done the same thing for him. And almost 10 years later, I had the privilege of doing the same part when his son was raised. So that is something that sticks in my memory.
So is that part of your lodge history, right, Worship Brother, where there's a lot of brethren who are part of the legacy of being in the lodge for a long time?
Yes, and it is actually a lodge of fathers and sons. We currently have 4 third-generation Masons in the lodge.
So I'm guessing the lodge is more like family than anything else.
Well, somehow this particular lodge is that way. Or turns out to be that way.
That's so nice. Right, Worship Brother, I do know that you have held multiple leadership roles, both professionally and at the lodge. What are the tenets of Freemasonry that have helped you in this wonderful journey of yours in such leadership roles?
Well, actually, it's a funny thing, but just on Monday, that's 2 days ago, after festive board was over, by dining, I was asked the same question by another fairly, not a very senior Mason, but one of our young and up-and-coming Masons. So if I look back professionally at things that I've done, decisions I've made in the past 25 years or so professionally, I seem to have actually based some of my decisions, some of my actions, knowingly or unknowingly, on Masonic principles. Simple ones like being impartial, having the integrity to stand by an agreement, even if it's a verbal one and on a handshake, irrespective of what else happens, unless reasons to break that agreement were very absolutely convincing. Even to admitting to a mistake, there's nothing wrong with it. To stand on your ground on principle, no matter how unpalatable your action might be to someone else or anyone else. And if you undertake a task, to perform it. I was once asked, while being the managing director of a company, why my door was always open to any category of employee. My answer was that me being the court of last resort for even a minor employee, say a company janitor team, approached me meant that he was absolutely desperate, not getting a response or any kind of clarity from anybody else. And that it was my duty and my responsibility to listen to him and see what I could do, or her, of course, and see what I could do to alleviate that issue. Personally, it's taught me to treat everyone as an equal. Quite often the phrase, "there but for the grace of God go I," has come into my mind. It has a particular resonance to me, that phrase. It has shown me that charity is not just reaching into your pocket, but also giving of your time to make it more meaningful. It has enriched the practice and enhancement of my faith, one particular faith. And to a great extent, I have found it to be a stress reliever for me. Quite often after a hard day at office, a stressful day, I've gone into a lodge meeting, and by the time I've come out, I've completely de-stressed. On other occasions, I've simply picked up a ritual and started to read some part of it. And that has done the trick as well. So at the end of the day, I would say that Freemasonry has given me a lot more than I ever put into it, actually.
That answer of yours has been so enriching, right, Worship Brother? One of our universal problems has been connecting to Gen Y and Gen Z. How do you deal with that problem in your district?
Well, today, unlike when I joined Freemasonry, that is not as much of a problem as it used to be. But it's still there, of course. looking back at the time I was initiated and maybe a few years after that, one quite often understood that old riddle about how many Freemasons it takes to change a light bulb. It takes somebody to form a committee, somebody to do it, and then, of course, a whole bunch of people sitting and saying that's not how we did it. When you look at it, the only thing somewhat certain in life is change. It's always going to happen. I never understood why then, and I certainly don't understand why now, that there is resistance to change in Freemasonry. The older generation, I have been sort of banging on them on that. It's time that they step back, they let go, and they let the younger brethren take over. I have told them, even from the point of view of the district, yes, those younger brethren are going to be the brethren who are going to be running this district, not you and me. It takes a little convincing, but to be fair to them, most of them are now convinced that that's the way to go. Some of them are a little reluctant still, but they're working on that. And I, of course, had occasions in the past, in my days in Freemasonry, I was a fairly brash and abrasive personality then. And I would quite often say, when somebody said, no, you can't do that, that's not the way we do things, my response would be something like, why don't you wake up? Why can't we change things? Well, that doesn't happen anymore. It didn't go down very well then. But in fact, I do try to practice what I preach. In the lodges of which I'm a member, I do insist that we involve the younger brethren as much as possible. But at the end of the day, if you do not keep their interest with so many other calls on their time and purse, you are likely to see them at some point start to drop out. I'm happy actually that my own general board, if you look at the average age on the general board, it's about 54. There are some very senior brethren, but the vast majority of the brethren on the board are between, say, 38 and 50. And that is why, because I believe that today Freemasonry is a younger man's game. It's not for us older people to keep saying, okay, that's the way we did things, that's the only way you can do things. No, it doesn't work that way. So as far as possible, we do try to give I insist that the youngsters be given the head, and it's been quite successful because they've always lived up to whatever responsibility has been entrusted. So I think that's the only way we can move forward.
Thank you, Right Worship Brother. Historically, Freemasonry has been a gentleman's arena. Has the district made any advancements in engaging the ladies of Masonic families?
Well, yes, in the sense that we have had, I think, since the turn of this century, a very regular influx of ladies at festive boards, installation nights, district dinners, other special occasions. And that has helped a lot. So because the ladies then get to know the other brethren, not that we don't meet outside, the ladies get to know each other, which is also very helpful for all of us. And we do try to involve them in our charitable activities as much as possible, because they have a lot to contribute there and a lot to help us out. And they have ideas which we can utilize, and we do. We've even started white table lodge meetings, where at one point the lodge is called off, the ladies are brought in, and topics of Masonic interest are discussed, explaining to the ladies various items of Masonic. I don't know whether you're aware, but even the charge after initiation in a somewhat modified form can be delivered at a white table meeting. There's an approved form by Grand Lodge for that to be delivered. So that is something. And of course, no lodge meetings, of course, are a real family outing, because lodge meets on a Saturday. So generally, in recent years, we've had an influx of brethren bringing their families, children. We normally go up on, say, a Thursday, get back on Sunday or even Monday. So it has become a complete family outing. And that's something that everybody enjoys, and they keep dragging their friends, other Masonic friends, saying that you must come, you must join us. So much so that we are now looking for a dining place, because the place where we dine now can't accommodate everybody. We need a bigger place to accommodate the growing numbers. So we're looking for something to do that. But we do try to involve them as much as possible, where we can, when we can. And I think it's a very important thing that we do.
This sounds like so much fun, Right Worship Brother. Right Worship Brother, on a closing note, we do know Sri Lankans love their music and are a completely fun-loving bunch. How happy are your festive boards? And how do you infuse your traditional fun into an otherwise conservative organization?
Well, it's an interesting question. And the answer is, of course, we all follow the mantra of recently retired Most Worshipful Program Master, but Most Worshipful Brother Jeffrey Lowndes, who always said that Freemasonry should be enjoyed. That's a perfect fit for Sri Lankan Masons, for after all, any excuse is good enough for a party. Our festive boards are really never too serious, in the sense that while we observe all the formalities, and there is a point, of course, when brethren are likely to tell a speaker, that's leaving aside the district grand master, nobody dares do that, that he's maybe going on for too long. Or will find very quickly that the speech gets cut off at some point and quickly retire. It's also not very unusual that you'll see a guitar or two coming out before the toast to the master's song being sung, and then the master's toast being followed through. And well, once the Tyler's toast is drunk, well, that's when things will tend to come alive. If the guitars are out, the songs will continue. The fellowship, of course, obviously very continues. Those who want to, well, just eat and depart will do so. Those who want to eat and stay on will do so. And generally, things will go on till around 10:30 or 11. And then in the last couple of months or so, it's become very common for the brethren, after the meeting is over, after the fellowship eating, to retire to a nearby bar, which has some 350 different versions of arak cocktails. Arak is, you might say, the Sri Lankan national drink, a version of a Sri Lankan whiskey. And I understand after the last meeting, I was informed that now some 220 odd cocktails have been tasted, and the balance 120 or so would be tasted and finished before the end of the year. I have participated in some of those, and I can tell you it's a rather, well, a very enjoyable time, though doing it on a weekday sometimes gives you a problem the next day, especially if you have to do something in the morning and some work. But that's part of it. I understand, and I think everybody has realized that for the younger Masons in the district, it is a very, very important part of the meeting, the fellowship part of it. It's understandable. They're young, they want to enjoy themselves. But of course, the corollary is that when you do give them ritual work to do, they do it very well. They're committed to that as well. So it's a checks and balances, and I don't see any issue with it really. I'm quite glad that they enjoy it.
Right, Brother. The answer you've given me makes it very interesting to come and visit one of your lodges as soon as possible. And definitely the bar that has 300 cocktails, it should be part of the checklist of things to do when we visit Sri Lanka for sure.
I assure you, you'll be more than welcome.
Right, Brother. I'm from the Nilgiris, and I see your name Nilgiria in the thing. So is there a connection to Nilgiris?
Yes, Brother Sriram, there is a connection. The original family name was Edelji. The family actually was in Ooty. There was a plantation called Martin Abbott's, and the three brothers, when they separated, my grandfather came down here to Sri Lanka and changed his name to Nilgiria, because coming from the Nilgiris, for some reason, he decided to change his name to Nilgiria. So I can trace my roots back to Ooty in some form or other.
Oh, wow. A nice connection to have. I think there's still an Edelji's house, if I'm not mistaken, still in Ooty.
Yes, there is.
Yes, and I've gone outside and seen the property once from, I think, during the pandemic times. I'm not too sure. Yeah. Right, Worship Brother, we had a truly insightful, engaging, and a fulfilled time with you today. I'm sure that all our listeners will be more than eager to visit your lodges and experience the wonderful masonry that's practiced in your district. Thank you again for spending your valuable time with us and sharing invaluable Masonic learning and experiences with all of us. We will look forward to having you with us in our future episodes and novel programs that we curate in the learning and development in the District of Madras. We are sure that this session will go a long way towards inspiring new and younger Masons and furthering their understanding of our beloved organization.
Thank you, Brother Sriram, for giving me this opportunity to participate with you. I do look forward to participating maybe at some future program, but most of all, I look forward to be back in the District of Madras sometime soon to meet up with all my old friends and maybe obviously make some new friends as well. Thank you very much.
On that note, thank you to a wonderful guest. And thank you to all our listeners for tuning in to this episode of the podcast. We look forward to having you with us again on the next episode of The Rising. Till then, this is Rohit Roy signing off. Farewell, brethren.